Hi, my name is Beth Myers, and I am a consultant with Decisions. I'm a former salesperson with Decisions for 2 years, and I'm currently a professor at the University of Minnesota and doing some consulting with Decisions for the marketing team. And I'm happy to introduce our panel. We're having an industry panel for healthcare. We're going to make this session very informal because we have just a handful of you watching us today, and so we'd like to get some good discussion going. After I ask the panelists to introduce themselves, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves as well, especially we have a couple of customers in here, and make sure that we get any questions answered that you might be interested in. Yes. And I've been doing some work with the marketing team, so I have a little bit of insights into our healthcare customers and what they're using Decisions for, so I'll share that information, as well as we'll get some firsthand experiences of what we're using Decisions for in healthcare. With that, I will ask my colleagues here to introduce themselves. So that was me, Beth Myers. Go right ahead, Joe, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Joe Morrison. I'm a product manager at Wound Tech, and we're a home health organization that's focused on wound care specifically. I guess full disclosure, Wound Tech is owned by the same VC as Decisions, which is Aldridge Capital Partners. We are using Decisions for one of our case management systems, and then we're also implementing a referral management system at this point as well.
Great.
Hi, my name is Doron Eskenazi. I'm the software development manager for a healthcare company, HealthPoint Medical Group. We're located in the Los Angeles area. Beth was our sales representative that actually got us on the platform. And then we have currently an application in production, built in Decisions, and we have planned several additional applications in the future. And I think
that's good for now. We'll ask you more questions.
Yeah.
Anyone in the audience, we'd love to know any other healthcare customers or people with healthcare experience. Again, since it's a small group, we'd love to get to know you, so it's not just me asking questions off my list. Hi.
I'll break the ice. Matt, I work for the August Group. We're based out of Bermuda, and we actually do health insurance and pensions as an employee benefit to most of the employers on the island. Mm-hmm. So we have some sort of connection there between health guys and insurance. So I'm interested to see what sort of tools you guys are using that we could sort of integrate in the future. Since we're using Decisions, you're just using Decisions, so whatever your case management is, we would love to know if we could integrate with something like that to be able to manage those claims when they come through to the health insurance.
Great, thanks for sharing. And any other customers, healthcare customers?
Wade Blasenkamp from Radiology Partners. We currently have an application that's in production. Actually, a couple that has helped build for us. Specifically, we're currently releasing the H7 module to affect some of the information that we get in from our radiologists. And just patient data just to feed into our business, our billing software to help with the capture of anything that we do need to bill.
Right, so billing and with the HL7 module, that's great. For those of you who are just joining us now, we have, this is the healthcare panel, but we have such a small group that we're also trying to make it a little bit more of a round table. So we've heard from a couple of the attendees, but if you are a current Decisions customer in the healthcare space, we'd love to hear a little bit about what company you're from or a prospective customer, what you're looking for, interested in, and how you're using Decisions. Anyone else would like to share that back? Any other customers or potential customers? Okay. We have a couple employees in here as well, so. Thanks. So for my first question for the panel up here is, could you tell us a little bit more about how you're using Decisions today? I know you gave us a brief overview, but Doron, would you like to go first and talk about what you have built in Decisions today? And I'll follow up with a question about what you're planning to do next later.
Absolutely. Today, the first application we actually thought of that would be a great use case for Decisions was to assist our collections department. We do a lot of workers' comp billing. We actually outsourced our billing to a completely different company, and our internal collection department had a lot of trouble following up on the collectors and making sure that things get actually done and done on time. So what we did is we just built a collection assistant, basically, where each collector, we aggregate the work that they do throughout the day and we put it in a dashboard, and our supervisors can see what each collector has done, what accounts they followed up on. If they have any questions, they can actually open up a ticket directly to that collector and say, hey, you're supposed to be doing this, but you're not, so can you please let me know why you're not doing this? And we just put it out there, and everybody thought, well, this is ridiculous, how is it gonna work? And it's been out in production, and we haven't heard a peeps from them. They're using it, they're happy with it. So that kind of opened up the door, and everybody now wants to do stuff in Decisions, and we're currently in the middle of developing another product for a completely different side of the business, which I can talk about a little more, but I'm going to pass on.
Yeah, sure. So, and then the application we currently have built within Decisions is a case management application for reviewing clinical cases. So our patients that we see are patients who have, advanced stage wounds. And typically what we would do is do an evaluation of those patients as they are kind of under our care. So if we have patients that are, and essentially it's a workflow system, right? We call it a clinical review system, or CRS for short. It wouldn't be a healthcare system if it didn't have an acronym. But essentially what that does is if it's a patient that has been under our care for longer than a specific threshold that we would deem to be kind of acceptable, that patient's medical chart information gets sent to a case manager, and that's routed to the case manager through a work queue, and then that case manager will work the case, and when they identify kind of what the care plan should be for that patient, they will send through Decisions notification to the clinicians in the field, basically in terms of how they should be handling that case with those patients.
Thanks for sharing. Those are actually two great use cases that as exemplars of how our customers are using Decisions today in the healthcare space. Would you guys mind if I share a slide real quick to talk just a little bit about that, and we'll get into what you're building out next. Our customers in the healthcare space, I mentioned that I've been doing some consulting with Decisions and looking at our current use cases. Part of that was to help the marketing team rebuild our website so we can better market to customers that are like our own customers. And our customers fall into these major categories. So we work with payers and care management systems, and you've got kind of that case management use case, even though it's a at WoundTech. And then providers like HealthPoint, where you've got any problem that a regular business has, plus healthcare problems on the top, where you're doing billing and collections. We also have a lot of customers in the revenue cycle space, or that are leveraging our product in the revenue cycle space, like we heard about from the two who shared with us in the back, so thanks for sharing that with us. And pharmacy benefits management. If you ask me who we had the most that are very like customers, of all of our customers, the PBM space is the place where we, as Decisions, have the most customers that are exactly like apples to apples, almost the same kind of customer and use case. We also have customers doing clinical trials with us, not clinical trails. And then healthcare software and services, customers who are embedding Decisions so they can have that flexibility to change logic within their other applications that they are building, so third-party applications. And I think one of those is in one of the spaces that one of you are building out in the referral space.
Yeah, that's a current initiative that we have right now with Decisions. So basically, our, as a provider of healthcare, kind of post-acute, we get a lot of referrals from multiple different sources, whether that be a referring physician, payers, et cetera. Those come in a multitude of different ways. We get them email, we get them through a portal, fax. We get quite a bit of faxes. So right now, that's a very manual process for us. We have a team that kind of will log into different portals or retrieve faxes, read them off, kind of enter them into our EHR system, which we have our own homegrown EHR, which we're planning to integrate with Decisions. But really, what we're working on is automating as much of that process as possible, and then creating work queues and workflows for the users that manage the referrals when they come in. So that way, they have a means in which they can easily, more effectively manage their workload. And then that'll allow us to kind of expedite the patient and the throughput of the patient through the referral process and to get them to be seen much more quickly, right? So when you have patients who have, we have some patients that have some very severe wounds. We want to be able to see them as soon as possible, like within a couple of days. We don't want them to have to wait a week or so to get scheduled to be seen. And a part of that process is to make sure that we're kind of getting the referral through our processes as quickly as possible so we can schedule a clinician to be out into their home to be able to see them.
Great, thanks for sharing. That matches with one of the customers who I met again in the sales cycle who was really focusing on referrals and using Decisions also to manage credential management for their providers, where they could take in all the different aspects that are necessary to make sure someone is credentialed and approved to do practice in one area, and manage that, match it up against the referrals to make sure someone's also hitting being referred to someone who's credentialed, kind of all in that space.
Yeah, we think there's a lot of opportunity for us because, there's a lot of problems that we're trying to solve within it, such as like verifying the patient contact information, right? So integrating other solutions that allow us to do that. Something pretty simple like integrating with the United States Postal Service just to validate that the address is a legitimate address, right? So that's one thing that we're doing. Another area that we'd be looking to once we kind of manage the referral process and get that going is, just patient contact experience for the most part. So kind of automating some of those processes in terms of reaching out to patients, scheduling patients, confirming visits with patients, those type of things. So right now we have kind of a care management team that reaches out to the patients, calls them, they schedule, if it gets canceled, they have to call us, right? So it's not the most optimal type of experience from a user perspective. So we're looking to employ Decisions as a later phase of this to do more patient engagement as well.
Mm-hmm. Frequently. What are you up to next, John?
Well, we have the most immediate things that we're working on are things that the business has been trying to do for a long time. One of them is request for approval, which is a big thing for us because we can't do anything before we get that. And it's a very manual process right now. So one of the things that we're trying to solve with the use of Decisions is to make that process a lot more, streamlined, automated, and so we can get the approval on time. Along with that, we're going to one of the bigger projects that we're planning is surgery orders. And that is something that requires, sometimes take many steps in order to get somebody onto the surgery table. So there's going to be sort of like a workflow type of a process where, the hats will pass from one department to another department to make sure that at the end, the patient can arrive to the surgery and everything is all ready, basically. So those are very exciting things that we're going to be working on.
The last one is super exciting for me. I used to be a surgery manager, and I was a manager at a hospital where they had no electronic anything. I had only my own computer. I was the first nurse manager there with a computer in 2005. And
that must have been crazy.
Part of my orientation, I have to tell this story, it's one of my favorite stories, that my orientation, the manager who was getting ready to retire, who'd been there for 40 years, she said, okay, Beth, and then when you have your staff meeting and you write down your minutes, then you attach this half form with a paper clip and you give it to the typist and they type your staff meeting notes for you. And I said, oh, Karen, it's 2005 and typist isn't a word anymore. So poor Karen, yes. But we had a surgery scheduling, was all paper process, and so that's one of my first forays into IT is that I modernized that by putting in an Access database. But some of the same problems we have with workflow, my students are experiencing today, like surgery workflow. Sometimes there's special consent forms you have to have for different insurance companies that are only one-offs for specific procedures.
Right.
And the prior auth, there's a lot that goes into that. So great, right for automation.
Yeah, and I noticed you have rev cycle up here as well, so that's kind of an area that we were targeting as well. It's a pretty manual process for us at this point, so there's a lot of opportunity for us from a rev cycle perspective as well. So, I mean, we feel like, you know, for no-code platforms, decisions or whatnot, like there's really a lot of great opportunity to help with automation, workflows, and kind of help manage people's workloads and make things a lot more efficient and effective, right?
Excellent. Thanks for sharing what you're doing today and what you're looking forward to doing in the future. I have a couple other questions prepped to ask them, but before I jump in, does anyone from the audience have any questions you'd like to ask of our current customers that we have up on the panel? Brady, our customers in the audience who are using HL7 module, how is that? How long have you been using that HL7 module? I always get questions about that when I was on the healthcare sales team focusing on that.
It's been in production since, I believe, May of last year.
May of last year?
Yes. So basically the way that we have it set up is we have an underlying large project or program that is processing in ADTs, ORMs, and ORUs, and we're outputting a built DFT that parses billing software is.
Okay.
And on top of that, we also have an interface project there where we say, okay, well, we know this interface deals with ADT specifically this way, so we have to take what we need from those ADTs, which can be completely different from the next interface that you're dealing with, and then process out the exact template standardized message DFT to your billing software without any problem whatsoever. And if anybody knows, HL7 messages between two separate entities is going to be completely different. Even though it's a standard itself, it's used completely different by every single system. So Decisions does a pretty good job of actually allowing you to affect the message and how you see them.
Did you say event the message? To affect the message, yeah.
To take what you need from it, build what you need out of it, and send it to whatever the resulting application.
Great.
So far, I haven't had too many issues. I'll say there's one thing that I came across that actually crashed our entire app service in just one single feature. So that's one great letter there. And just one single segment that, for whatever reason, they just was like, what is this? I'm going to crash. And so I sent out the decision. I was like, you probably should know this. It's honestly, I find it fun finding little small things that happen like that. And all I had to do was in the preprocessor of the HL7 module to say, please remove this. I don't want to see it. And by the time it gets to the processing level of the HL7 module, it doesn't have to deal with it. Therefore, the app service is safe. So,
Interesting. So you're pulling in messages in ADT format and other formats, then reformatting them into the way that your billing system needs. And did you say DFTs? The charge message, yeah. And you can do some pre-processing and decisions if you need to, stripping things off, and interim processing while you're doing transformation from one type to the other type. And it's been working for about a year, so that's great. Not too many bugs. I worked with a company who had just an HL7 engine in a previous life, so always interested to hear about, like, Decision has that. It's just a little baby module right there, and that's their whole product without all the transformation Decisions could do. So I always think about that HL7 module as something that's really special and underutilized in our healthcare space. So thanks for sharing that with me. Any other questions for the panelists? Okay. Anyone else in the audience want to share what they're planning to work on next in decisions before I ask the panelists more questions? Nope, guess I better stop playing with my computer screen. I have a couple questions. One of them is the one that was always asked by every potential customer in the sales process, and they want to know about security. And I'm interested in, was security an issue for you when you decided to choose decisions? And are there parts about decisions that help you with your security and data security? Ron, you want to go first? Yeah.
I can go first. We didn't have any specific concerns. We knew that we basically, I mean, the way we do things is we don't utilize storage in decisions. We utilized like our own separate storage, and we know we can encrypt our data.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when it comes to documents, we know we can encrypt the documents as we save them into storage. So it wasn't a big concern for us at all. We were fine.
Right.
Yeah, for us, I mean, I think just as a provider of healthcare services to patients, right, HIPAA is always a concern, right? And so whenever we're evaluating any type of application, we're always looking at security there as well. So, I mean, you know, I think for a tool like Decisions to be able to kind of have pre-built security protocols in there, and also maybe pre-built encryption and masking functionality is really helpful as well. So just kind of an example, one of the reasons we chose this Decisions from one of our applications, and it was a security concern, was we have our own like referral portal, right? So whenever we have patients or referring physicians that want to refer patients to us, if they don't send it via fax or whatnot, we have a portal in which they can send those referrals to. That platform is a pretty old platform. It was not secure really at all. So that was one of the reasons why we decided to work with Decisions, because we knew it would be secure, and we actually rebuilt that platform onto Decisions, which we're actually launching next week as well. So yeah, security is a major concern because we're always handling patient data and HIPAA, and making sure that we're in lockstep with those security protocols. So
Great. Yeah, it was something that my general answer was that if your data is encrypted at rest and in transit, then we check the boxes generally for security. And then there's so many more boxes you can check if you want to, but to deep dive, but Decisions has those certifications as well. So, yeah. Yes, Decisions does some. Yes. Yeah. Any other related questions, or does anyone else like to share anything that they're working on for our next project from the audience? No, not too much. I am going to jump in then with a question about the ChatGPT a little bit and AI. I'm like, because you have the magic microphones and you get to have your opinion about something, I'm interested in any opinions that you have about AI and healthcare, or any other opinions that you have that you'd like to share with the team, because you've got the microphone, got everyone's attention. Or we can share if we want to go around table.
One of the things that seem very exciting coming up is transcriptions. Our doctors work a full day, and then after they've worked like 10 hours, they have to go back to the patient's records and then transcribe everything. And it makes life really, really hard for them. One of the things that I think is coming up is giving the doctor the ability to basically record what they're saying at the time that they're seeing the patient, and having that be worked out into the final transcription, and not have them to do double work at the end of the day. That will be an incredible product. And if I understood correctly, things like that are coming up, so that would be amazing, to have.
Yeah. Why do I have to document it all? Why don't you just have a camera watch what I'm doing?
Exactly.
Yeah. They're doing it they're watching me drive anytime I don't turn it off, so might as well get them used to me watching me do everything.
Right.
Thanks.
Well, I guess, my opinion on AI is that it's going to replace us all. I'm kidding. But I think obviously there's a lot of benefit to that. I mean, one area that we are looking at, pretty similar to what you are in terms of transcription, is, we have clinicians that are in the field. They're working with patients. They do their notes at night, right? So kind of being able to take that information and maybe to turn that into like care plans for the patient. So, another thing that they do is we do wound assessment photos, right? So we take a picture of the patient's wound to see how it's healing. And we want to make sure that they're actually having a good heal rate, or in some cases they're not, right? So being able to kind of take all of that patient information, that health, their health medical record detail, even just so we have a lot of patients that have a lot of other issues as well, comorbidities and whatnot, diabetes. So kind of factoring all those factors in together, and then being able to maybe at the point of care, being able to provide the clinician with a, kind of a work plan or a care pathway to how to treat that patient for that particular wound, considering that stage that wound is in. So, when they, giving them an application which they could take a picture, and that picture is then turned into, based upon the severity of the wound, how long it is, factoring in all these other details such as their medical records and whatnot, identify what the appropriate treatment protocol would be for that patient, right? So really expediting that patient care at the point of care is kind of something that we're looking at. I mean, I was really excited to see the ChatGPT integration at the lunch, because I started thinking about, all these other ways that we could possibly use that within our organization, so.
Yeah, that's exciting, and I like the way that you were talking about that as creating a personalized care plan. There's a group out there within the object management group, OMG, and OMG sponsors the BPMN, so Business Process Modeling Notation, the standard for creating workflows for business process modeling. There's a group within that group that is BPM plus health for healthcare, and that group is trying to use the BPM standard for all workflows, to say, instead of having a best practice guideline that's a 200-page PDF, which is how best practice guidelines come out today for how to take care of a patient with a specific illness, they said they should be written directly into BPMN and decision modeling notation, DMMN, and CMMN, which is case management modeling notation too. Yeah, lots of acronyms. So those tools are being used by this small community, this BPM plus health community, to standardize the way that workflows and care processes are documented. So if they're all documented the same way, now you could use whatever decision support system that you'd like to be able to implement those. But those are still best practice, and best practice out there is based off of the evidence and what's available for specific guidelines based off of the studies done on those populations. For example, blood pressure medicines or statin use for people at high risk for having a heart attack. Those don't cover what happens if I have elevated cholesterol in someone who's 30 years old. They're not part of the standard. We don't know, what am I supposed to do? It's elevated, it's not normal, but there's not a best practice guideline. Well, I like what you said, because there's the best practice guideline out there we want to adhere to, but then there's the care that this expert physician has decided is the best care for this individual patient. And instead of documenting that all out into a workflow and programming step by step and explaining in a way the patient can understand, you could use AI to be that interpreter of the doctor for the patient. It's a really interesting use case.
Yeah.
Like it. Question in back.
On the topic of best practices, AI, and healthcare, are you at all concerned about the potential security or lack thereof of AI and patient privacy and data, with it being fed into AIs like ChatGPT for all this sorting and automation in the future? Or do you think that's something that's already being thought of and being taken care of as we speak?
I mean, I think that's a good question. I'm not sure that it's being thought through thoroughly at this point, right? I think there's obviously a lot of things to factor and consider. I think in terms of maybe our utilization and kind of looking towards using AI, we would make sure that we were being very specific around the types of data that we're feeding into it. So nothing that is very specific to an individual patient, right? Kind of more generalized type of, information or detail in which, you cannot kind of specifically identify a patient or a patient record or something like that, right? So, I mean, I think any type of usage of that, we would definitely need to be very careful in terms of what type of data that we're actually utilizing in conjunction with it as well.
Yeah, same goes for us. I mean, inherently, there's a concern, security concern because of PHI. So we would have to do our due diligence and make sure that whatever tools we're using are secure.
Good question. I'm going to take this slow to talk just a little bit more about some of the healthcare use cases, and then have you guys chime in on about anything you might like to, anything you see that you like. This is the first breakdown kind of about our healthcare customers, and about between 20 and 30% of our customers are in the healthcare space, when we define that healthcare space like we did on that last slide. So if you want to know, that's a pretty big chunk. Financial services and in general is our biggest category within customers for decisions, or that financial services space. And then healthcare and manufacturing are kind of neck and neck in there for the next two big chunks of company types that are using decisions. And within healthcare, when I look at the use cases that we have documented in our marketing systems, we see a lot of these use cases that are similar to our non-healthcare customers. So sometimes it's just a simple rules or reporting, or non-healthcare specific integrations, or maybe master data management cleanup. We have customers using it for HR workflows, for managing workflow within the, and approvals processes, which are simple things, easy to do within decisions regardless of the industry. But then we have a couple of really unique use cases for healthcare. So the darkest blue chunk on the top here, I think, is the application chunk. Those are customers who are building full-on applications on our software. So our company was actually co-founded with a company that did billing rules. And so the very first use case for decisions was a healthcare use case, and it was in that revenue cycle space. So some of those customers are still running with decisions under the hood as the logic that's helping to manage through those billing rules and the revenue cycle space. The other area that's really big is the case management space, and it's a little sliver here. I think it's because it's not well documented in our CRM, not because it's not being used very much in healthcare. I'd say that's another big space for decisions about what the care pathway should be, what's the case management for this particular patient, a little bit as you described and using at Wound Tech, also just taking care of that patient over time for both of you. And then the last one that's really unique, I think, is that HL7 module that we have, and it's a specific capability for healthcare. And so thanks for sharing a little bit about your use case and what you're using that HL7 module for. Anything on this surprise you, or any comments on some of those use cases that we have that people are finding in the healthcare space for no code?
Personally, I'm not surprised, because I think decisions can be used for different types of applications. Like I mentioned earlier, from a workflow management. One of the things that we're also building right now is a website for us to. We have another business which is healthcare finance, so that is a way for us to bring in people and referrals and actually manage their care as their cases progress. But initially, when I got introduced to the product, I didn't think I could develop a full-on application with it. And through getting myself or getting our team familiarized with it, we realized yes, we can do that, and that's what we're working on. So
Excellent.
definitely not surprised at that. I would have loved to use the HL7 module because we came across a use case where we could use that, but because of other constraints, we ended up having to go with EDI. I hope that sometime in the future we'll be able to migrate that and actually use Fire
Right.
instead of that. But I'm definitely not surprised.
Right. It's amazing. I attend too many conferences, so HIMSS is the big conference for IT and healthcare, and I went to HIMSS for so many years in a row, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're so far behind as the company that I worked for at that time. And then I go back and talk to people who are actually boots on the ground. I'm like, oh wait, people are still not even adopting HL7 yet, or they're still back on EDI. And so when we talk about Fire is here and everyone's marketing about Fire, we're not there yet, actually, yeah, in a lot of places. But we have that Fire capability within Decisions as well to manage that API and manage that data transformation in between Fire calls. So I think that could be interesting for any of you who want to take that on as a challenge in the next year and the next time in Decisions Days. Give us a call. We'd love to see a trial of that with someone and do a little spiel on it. Okay. Any other thoughts, Joe?
I mean, I don't think specifically on this. I'm not surprised by these either. I think we're starting to recognize that there's a lot of opportunity for us as we kind of take a look at our business kind of more holistically and utilizing Decisions, especially around integration points, right? So integrating with Salesforce, for example, integrating with our EHR, integrating with our call system, which we use RingCentral right now, and just being able to kind of create workflows, track information, and build processes around those. So I think for us, identifying where we want to utilize Decisions and then identifying integration points is really kind of where we're focused at this point.
Great. I have a customer maybe to connect you with who's managing that kind of the workflow or the inbound calls.
Oh, okay.
Same kind of thing, so remind me of that afterwards. Any other last questions for the panelists? Yes.
Are you seeing any use cases in value-based care, risk sharing, risk calculation, mitigation, that area?
Yeah, give me 1 second to sort that in my head from my Decisions use case versus everything else that I know about that. When I think about value-based care, I think about tracking, putting a contract in place between the providers and the insurance companies, and then tracking that over time for how those providers are doing compared to what the insurance companies say. So one of the biggest issues that they have when in the value-based care, those providers and the insurance companies, is having a single source of truth that everyone believes that this is how well I'm doing. Decisions could be used to help collect that data and from the underlying data and aggregate that data in a workflow pattern, and you could provide the rules for, hey, I'm including this one but not including this one, and code all of those rules really well in Decisions. I don't know of any customers who are using it that way today, but I think the rules specifically about who can be counted and included as a covered live in that contract is a really good use for Decisions. You can see all that logic and make it clear and make sure that you're doing it the right way. Mm-hmm. Any other comments for the panelists? Yeah. Oh, questions? Yeah.
My last company, I knew at Decisions, but where I just came from was a company that did data aggregation for value-based care. And there were gaps in what we could do, and one of them that comes up a lot is interoperability. So between all the data that we've aggregated, and then we're surfacing point of care insights, and they take some action in that point of care tool, but then they can't get that communicated back to the EHR, whether they're starting now with Epic, but with some of the other ones, there's a gap there.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's something that is coming up. I feel like call my old company, they probably use Decisions. But.
I'll hook you up with one of the salespeople. They'd be happy to get the contact information for you. But Yeah, that interoperability is a place where Decisions as a company doesn't have a sales team that's specific to try to sell into healthcare. And so these problems aren't ones that we've tried to address externally yet, but they're ripe for Decisions because of the mess of data that is healthcare data. Yeah, good point. I think it sounds like we're at time from how loud it is out the doors. Do either of you have any final comments that you'd like to make as we wrap things up?
No, just thank you for your time. Appreciate your attention today and your attendance. So and thanks for leading, Beth. So appreciate it. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I just want to say that decision support has been awesome. Anytime we need assistance, we get on the phone. They jump in with us. We just did a code review with Decisions just to make sure that we are on the right track. That was awesome. We got some really, really good feedback. So we feel comfortable. We feel good about our relationship, and we're definitely looking for a fruitful ongoing relationship.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to present and share your stories with the rest of the healthcare team today. And please mingle and get to know each other so you guys can make this, healthcare group here. I encourage that. Thanks so much for attending.
Thank you.